So I want to begin by saying congratulations, everyone. Congratulations on being admitted. That's a huge first step, and that's really, really exciting. This is an incredibly exciting time in your life and in your future career. So congrats. Definitely take some time to relish in that. Secondly, I want to introduce myself. My name is Camila Tabar. I work for USC Viterbi's graduate recruitment. So I largely focus on campus recruitment for both domestic US population and international. And I'm excited to be here today because I am introducing some representatives from Viterbi Career Connections, who, if you guys enroll, you will be working very closely with in the future. So first one is Caitlin Harada. She is the director of Viterbi Career Connections. And then second is Maggie Cutler. She's the head of employer relations. So they have a lot of great information for you guys, and they will allow for some questions. So if you can listen as intently as possible for the duration of this presentation, once they open the floor to questions, feel free to use the Q&A box on your screen. So not the chat, we'll be using that for announcements. Go ahead and use the Q&A portion of Zoom. If you have any questions or technical difficulties, you can shoot out a message to me directly and I can help you out. Otherwise, sit back and enjoy. And I'll hand this off to you guys.
Thanks, Camila. Welcome our incoming graduate students. We're so excited to welcome you into our community. And it's my great pleasure to be able to present to you today. I know you haven't enrolled in classes yet, but hopefully this will give you a really great preview into what's to come in your future. And just so you all know, Maggie is going to be on and she's going to facilitate the Q&A. So as you have questions, feel free to drop them in the Q&A box, and Maggie will help facilitate that. We are going to cover quite a bit of material today. So if you have any burning questions, you're welcome to hang on to those till the end because we might be answering some of the questions throughout the presentation. But Maggie will also be on to make sure that we get through all of that. Maggie may jump in here and there throughout the presentation as well to just provide some additional information from the employer perspective. That is always really helpful for students to know as they're navigating recruitment, whether that be for internships, co-ops, or full-time opportunities when you're ready for that. So without further ado, I wanted to present to you a little bit of information on the status of recruitment. And so let's jump into what our agenda is going to look like. So first, I'm going to cover some of the national hiring and recruiting trends for the United States. For our purposes today, I do want to emphasize this is United States recruitment information. So if you are interested in national or international information, you're welcome to contact us after the presentation and we can fill you in on a few of those blanks. But for today's purposes, we're solely focusing on the US. And in the second half of the presentation, we'll be covering how to prepare for recruiting season. So first, let's take a look at the national hiring and recruiting trends. Just so you all are aware, most of this information, actually all of this information is going to come from the National Association of Colleges and Employers, also known as NACE. And so we'll be talking about employers' response to the pandemic, job outlook, hiring projections, and also a little bit about our first destination outcomes. So what is NACE? So NACE actually is a community that connects more than 8,000 college career services professionals at nearly 2,000 universities nationwide. And it also connects over 3,000 university relations and recruiting professionals and business affiliates. So it's a really great place where industry meets education. And so they usually will send out surveys and do studies about recruiting and what's going on in the recruiting world. So for this presentation, I'm specifically pulling information from their Job Outlook 2021 Spring Update report, as well as the first destination for the college class of 2019. You may be thinking, why are you pulling from 2019? They have not released the 2020 data just yet. They like to do a lot of analysis and kind of pulling out different themes to report out on. So the newest information that I have is 2019. So we'll be taking a look at that. And I'll kind of explain a little bit more as we get a little bit deeper into the presentation. But if you're interested in NACE, I put their website right here. It's naceweb.org. All right, so let's dig in. What is happening in the world of recruiting? So let's talk a little bit about what employers have been doing. So when everything kind of shut down, schools went remote, recruiting also went remote. And so there has been a huge shift to virtual recruitment. And I do want to stress that this is not something that was wholly unexpected. It actually just sped up the process for virtual recruitment. Video interviews were happening, web calls were happening already. This really just pushed people, it pushed employers into these different platforms, maybe a little bit faster than they had intended. And it got rid of that in-person component that will come back. So what that meant for students in this past academic recruiting cycle was very targeted and specific events. So employers would have a particular population that they were targeting, and they would only invite, students that met their profile. This also meant multi-school environments. So previously, what we would do is we would host a lot of employers on our campus. And so because it was on campus, only Viterbi students were invited. However, now that things have shifted to this virtual environment, that means it's a little bit more open to the targeted schools that employers are recruiting from. So you can expect to see at some of these virtual events that there will be students from other universities attending. This also meant virtual fairs and different platforms that both universities were rolling out, but also that employers were rolling out. So employers started hosting their own virtual fairs, which, wasn't as popular as it is now, for, the reasons of going virtual. They could really scale up their recruiting efforts. As I mentioned, virtual interviews are now very, very common, just as common as maybe a telephone interview was previous. Now you can expect to have Zoom or WebEx or some other kind of video conferencing software as part of your interview process. And a lot of the employers now are doing series as opposed to just one event at a campus and then they're done. Now they're doing several touch points throughout the academic year. So some things to look out for. Other things that have happened is, remote work is very, very prevalent. I mean, obviously, all of us are remote right now. And so that's pretty common throughout a lot of the industries. The work that can be done remotely is being done remotely. That included a lot of internships. However, we are starting to see a little bit more of the in-person stuff happening very slowly, very surely. Some of the summer internships slated for this summer are even going to be in person. However, it is important to note that some of this virtual work will become permanent. So it's, has to do a little bit with the overhead costs for employers to have a space for you in an office or a building that they're renting. And so some of the work that can be done wholly remotely is probably going to stay that way. But the big key takeaway is that many things are remaining the same. There's going to still be that strong social media focus. You're still going to have to come prepared with your resume and your application materials. You have to stay involved because jobs aren't just going to come to you. Even as, a sought after Viterbi student, you're still going to have to put in the work to get the job. So one of the important things to note is that employers are adjusting their college recruiting efforts, in response to the pandemic and also coming back for the 2020, 2021 academic years. But they were more likely to change their recruiting methods, meaning like how are they connecting, than the recruiting schedule. So that is something that was a positive takeaway for us is that, they're still doing all the things that they said that they would do. They're just kind of switching up how it is that they're going about that process. And when asked if they would make changes to their class of 2021 recruiting schedule, almost 2/3 of the respondents said that they would maintain their regular schedule. And we're actually going to touch on schedules a little bit later into the presentation. All right, so let's kind of just dig right into some of the national data. And again, this is, coming from NACE. And so this info was pulled from the Job Outlook for 2021, the Spring Update Survey. And so this was conducted from February 17th, excuse me, to March 12th, 2021. So just last month it concluded. And the increase in hiring, so you can kind of see on this chart, I did provide several years of information. Fall looked like a slight decrease, but it was looking like spring is going up in terms of hiring. And while this isn't necessarily going to predict the future, it is, the increase in hiring for spring 21 suggests that there's a lot of optimism around, the reopening of businesses, the vaccine distribution, additional jobs as part of the economy, and really the economic recovery. So again, while this can't be used to predict the future, because we just don't know, it is a very positive sign of, possibly what's to come. So let's take a look at the national fall 2021 hiring projection. And so even though a large part of college recruiting has been conducted virtually due to the pandemic, you can see that the projected recruiting for fall isn't really showing any signs of weakening, and a large majority of the respondents to the survey still plan to hire for full-time internships and co-ops in the fall. So, again, that you can expect that there's still going to be recruiting activity. It might just be delivered in a different way. But it looks like, for the most part, employers that responded to the survey are, looking forward to continuing the hiring. Okay, so here's where we're going to dig into the first destination outcomes for the class of 2019. And so with the first destination outcomes, it's a nationwide survey. And essentially what we're asking students to do, or I should say graduates to do, is fill out the survey and let us know, where are you going after you graduate? And so this is something that gets sent out to bachelor's, master's, and doctoral students, up to 6 months post graduation. And just again, the class of 2020 isn't available yet in order to do like a comparison. At the Viterbi School, we have our 2020 numbers. But for the purposes of this presentation, I thought it might be a little bit more interesting to compare the Viterbi numbers with the national numbers. So as you can see, the employment both for engineering and computer science from Viterbi is very strong, beating the national averages. And so continuing education, we tend to have more of our students go directly into employment than going on to doctoral programs or possibly getting a second master's. And the other category is kind of making up of the students that are going on to do, volunteer work, military, kind of starting their own venture. They're doing something different than being employed by a hiring entity. So that's what the other category is. So if you're not straight going to work for somebody, if you're not, going into pursuing your education, this is where the other category is. So again, this was pulled from the NACE First Destination for College class of 2019. All right, so now that we really took a look at the national data, and I was able to provide you some talking points there, I thought it would be interesting to transition into preparing for US recruitment and how to navigate the process. And whether you're a domestic or international student, there are going to be some things that are helpful for everyone to know as you're preparing for the upcoming recruitment season. So just to preface, this is for everybody, domestic and international. So the first key thing to know is that virtual recruitment is here to stay. We're not seeing it go away. Again, as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, this really just sped up the process for a lot of organizations who were thinking about virtual recruitment, maybe weren't ready to commit to it yet, but here we are. So you can anticipate as you are looking at recruiting season, there's going to be a lot of virtual fairs, events, interviews. The virtual fairs are really going to be used for employers that want to cast a wide net, the large outreach, sometimes the branding of an organization. Those are the organizations that will show up to virtual fair. You will also see that there's going to be a number of smaller, more targeted events. And so with that comes along, a lot of organizations have a greater commitment now to diversity and equity as part of their recruiting and hiring process. So as part of building their pipeline, they're creating more targeted events for smaller populations. Another important note that you'll want to definitely remember is that a lot of the special invites to these smaller events are sourced through job applications on Viterbi Career Gateway. And so Gateway is our platform that we use. It's kind of your one-stop shop to all things career related. I'll get into that a little bit more in a few more slides. I'll get into what Viterbi Career Gateway is. But just know Gateway is going to be something that you'll hear a lot, that you'll see a lot, that you'll be logging into a lot. Other things to take note of is that there's going to be a lot more efficient pre-screening and scheduling systems. So you can anticipate that you're going to run into artificial intelligence, pre-recorded interviews, applicant tracking systems. And these are all things that you're going to have to work your way through these processes before an actual human is going to interview you or look at your resume. So just some things for you to anticipate moving forward. But I do also want to say on-campus recruitment is also coming back. So even though you can anticipate a lot of virtual events happening, we're also allowing employers to come to campus this fall. It's going to be by request. These are going to look a little bit different, really depending on the health guidelines and requirements from the state of California and Los Angeles County. As it stands right now, events on campus are socially distanced. You have to fill out the Trojan check, which I'm sure once we get closer to the fall, if you haven't heard of Trojan check yet, you'll be hearing about it in the near future. These events do require pre-registration, so you can't just drop in like maybe you could have before. There's going to be sanitizing and mask requirements. And also, depending on the size of the space, we may have limited capacity. So again, that's why the RSVP is going to be pretty important. So the news is good. Whether you are feeling comfortable and confident going to in-person events, or whether you choose to engage virtually, there are going to be options available for you and also for our employers. So let's talk a little bit about preparation. So, you know, some things are going to be online, some things may be in person. What can you do to help prepare yourself in the meantime? The first and most important piece is probably going to be utilizing our online career toolkit. And this is available to you now. You don't have to log in. You can just go straight to it. So if you go to the Viterbi Careers website and you do the drop-down menu, search toolkit, a lot of information is going to be available for you. So whether you find yourself in this time zone or a different time zone, or maybe you just really like to work at 3 o'clock in the morning when a career advisor is not going to be available, Toolkit is a great place to start. And this is going to be whether you are trying to create a resume, search for a job, or maybe it's even negotiating salaries or multiple offers. We have everything in between on there. The second thing that's important to know is about the applicant tracking system. And so I had mentioned about the pre-screen process. And so an applicant tracking system is that thing on the other side of an online job application. And some of the systems are very sophisticated, some of them less so. But anytime that you apply for a position online, unless you're direct emailing it to someone, you're going to go through an applicant tracking system. And the applicant tracking systems use um, a variety of different things. Sometimes it's a keyword search. So it's important that, if you're applying for particular positions, that you're including the skill sets that are listed as requirements in the job description on your resume, so that if someone goes in and does a keyword search, your resume will pop up. Similarly, sometimes it is based off of, your percentage match to a particular job. So it is important to go through the job announcement, the job description, making sure that you're incorporating keywords and phrases so that your application, your resume will go through the applicant tracking system and kind of pop up for a human on the other side to be able to find you to interview you. As I mentioned, there's going to be a lot of virtual events, and some of them will be hosted by Viterbi, and some of them will be hosted externally by the employer. So it's important that you start to familiarize yourself with different online platforms. So Zoom is just one platform. We also use the Simplicity system. Somebody might use WebEx. There could be the Brazen platform. So I'm throwing out a lot of names right now, but it's just kind of something that you're going to have to get used to is learning how to work the online platforms. And for the most part, a lot of them are very similar, which is helpful. But just know that people are going to be using everything. So it would be helpful to just get on board now with knowing that you're going to have to learn some new different platforms. And so on the proactive side, I think it's really important to get involved now. That means, joining student organizations. That means participating in events. It's networking. It's reaching out to your peers and faculty, people through Viterbi Link and Trojan Network. Start engaging now, because the more you engage in the process now, the easier it will be, so that you're not trying to cram all of this into, a week or two around Career Expo time. One of the main important things about the engaging process is not that you just show up and then you're done, but it's making sure that you have the follow-up and the follow-through, because you want to build relationships with recruiters, with organizations, with your faculty, so that potentially someone can refer you to a position later on, or you can get information that might have otherwise been missing from a job description or an event. So getting involved, engaging in the process, and making sure that you're following up with the contacts that you make as you're meeting them. And this goes for online networking as well as in-person networking or events. So let's talk a little bit about, when is all this stuff happening? I think one of the difficult things is that about 70% of all university recruiting happens in the fall semester. So you're coming in, you're a brand new student, maybe you're moving to LA for the first time, you're from another state or you're from another country, and it's all kind of a lot of stuff happening all at once. And then on top of that, you have to be ready for recruiting season. So just know in advance, and you can even start working on your resume this summer or your cover letters, or kind of strategizing what your plan is going to be. But a lot of the events are going to be taking place in late August to early October. These are going to be things like employer information sessions. It's going to be employer events that are sourcing candidates. It's going to be multiple career fairs and career expos. So just know August, September, and October, while they're probably going to be pretty busy for you as you're trying to acclimate to the university environment, this is also when a lot of recruiting happens. And this is, so you may get an offer in November for a position that starts, for an internship that starts in May. So for our international students, if you're here for the fall and spring, then you'll be eligible for CPT starting in the summer. So before you wait those 2 academic semesters, you're actually going to start recruiting as soon as you get here. So just want to make sure that that's pretty clear with people so that you know, like, this is time to rock and roll. But let's just say it's kind of stressful, you're getting used to everything, and you just don't have a chance to participate in as many events as you had thought on the career side, or participate in the recruitment activities. There is a second recruiting season, and this is going to be, late January, early March. And that's when the second wave of recruiting season happens. And this is going to be about 30% of all university recruiting. Now, one thing I do want to make very clear is that this is specific to university recruiting. So these are the employers that are doing on-campus events. They are targeting schools. Hiring happens all the time. So if you miss, the big events that are happening on campus, you can go to an employer's website and still apply and interview and get a summer internship. So just to be clear, there are multiple ways to engage in the recruitment process. The on-campus recruiting stuff is nice because it's like, hey, Viterbi student, I'm targeting you for this position. But you can absolutely apply on LinkedIn. You can apply on the company website. You can find resources for applications in other places besides just what's happening on campus. But if you want to participate, this is kind of when all the activity is happening. All right, so now that we kind of covered the recruiting season, let's talk about our flagship events that we do in Viterbi Career Connections. So this is just a very quick list of all the things kind of crammed into one slide. So we have our fall events. Something that is important to note is both the full fall semester and the full spring semester, we have ongoing Trojan Talks and on-campus interviews. And so a Trojan Talk is just an employer information session. So an employer will come. How they do the information session kind of varies depending on who the employer is. Sometimes it's a straight, here's our company and here's the positions. Sometimes it's going to be more of like a tech talk. Sometimes it's something completely different. It's all up to the employer. They'll just book it and it will be considered a Trojan Talk. On-campus interviews, I'm going to use air quotes for on-campus, because these may take place on campus or they may take place virtually. That this is something that will run through our office also throughout both academic semesters. But some things to look forward to is August really kicks us off with our Graduate Career Readiness Week. And so in the fall, when you start attending orientation presentations, you'll also hear about Graduate Career Readiness Week. And this is really just to give you, front load you with all the information. A lot of it, we kind of just briefly touched on during this presentation, but we'll go a little bit more in depth during the Graduate Career Readiness Week. September is our How to Get Hired series. And this is where we invite our employer partners to participate. And they're the ones that are going to be presenting different topics like resumes and networking and the recruitment process, interviews. And so you will hear directly from the employers, what is it that they're looking for? So if you don't believe us in the Career Connections office, you'll at least have the employers to talk to as well during that 4-part series. And then in October, we'll have our Career and Internship Expo, as well as a networking event. There might be multiple events. We're still calendaring stuff for the fall. And then towards the end of the semester, each semester, we try to do a career and internship boot camp. So this is for students who maybe you missed the workshop throughout the semester. Again, sometimes, you get really busy, midterms, projects, things happening in your life. And then you're to the end of the semester and you're like, oh no, I missed everything. We do a 1-day seminar where we cover everything from resume to salary negotiation and everything in between. So that's an option for you both semesters. So we pretty much mirror the fall semester to the spring semester with all of the big events. I guess the big difference would be in the spring semester, we also will do a mock interview day where we invite employers to participate and to do practice interviews with you. And then we'll also do the Viterbi Trek, which is where we take a group of students and we will go to an employer site and they will do different things, but it's usually like a tour, a panel discussion, kind of some hands-on activity. This year we were able to successfully do a virtual track, which was really awesome because we weren't able to go in person. So we're hopeful that we can actually do a couple of different kinds of tracks where we can do a virtual version as well as an in-person version. We'll just have to kind of see again where we're at in the spring semester. So now that we talked about events, let's talk a little bit about the resources. So I mentioned Viterbi Career Gateway a little bit earlier in the presentation. And again, this is going to be like your platform that you'll go to for everything career related. So this is a job and internship board. This is where you will find the Trojan Talks or company information sessions. This is where you're going to apply for on-campus interviews. This is where you'll find the workshops. This is where you'll schedule those advising appointments. And there's also a big resource library in there. So if you're not finding something on the toolkit on our website, chances are that it will be on the resource library in Viterbi Career Gateway. So advising appointments, we do one-on-one career advising appointments with students by request. And so these are usually 30-minute sessions where we'll walk you through the process. You know, what is it that you have questions about? Do you want to come up with a plan of action, or do you just have a question, or do you want to negotiate salary? So we do all kinds of career advising, you know, topics throughout these appointments. But let's just say you have a quick question, you don't need 30 minutes. We also offer drop-in hours. And so this is something that we were offering Monday through Friday. This semester, we're doing 2 p.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and Fridays from 2 to 5. Hours are subject to change when we come back in the fall. So we'll be sure to let you know what those hours look like. But do know it's a first come, first serve. You just pop in, ask your question, get an answer, and then you're free to go. So these are for more of those, like if something is urgent and you can't find an appointment like that day, or you just have a quick question, you can do the drop-ins. We also offer various professional development workshops throughout both semesters. We usually have over 20 workshops every semester. So if you can't get one, we usually offer a second one. We're also recording the workshops, and so we'll have those posted in the Gateway Resource Library. And then last but not least, we have Viterbi Link. So Viterbi Link, you can kind of think of it like Viterbi's version of LinkedIn. It's where you can connect with Viterbi alumni. And the alumni are in there to mentor you, answer your questions, do informational interviews. They're really there to serve as a resource for you. The good thing about Viterbi Link is that you're automatically connected to the alumni. You don't have to send that connection request and hope that they accept it. It's like you can straight email them as soon as you log in. You can search for who you want to connect with. And all the feedback that I've heard from students that have used the platform is that it was really, really helpful. The alumni are ready and willing to give back in terms of things that they wish they knew when they were a student, or what's the current climate, or any of the questions that you might have. Viterbi Link is an excellent resource. Other things to know is as a Viterbi student, you would have the advantage of having 2 career centers. Your home is going to be Viterbi Career Connections, and we manage the Viterbi Career Gateway portal. However, at the university level, we do have a USC Career Center, and they manage a similar portal called Connect SC. One of the things that students get really confused about is Connect SC versus Gateway, because you log in and the only way you can tell what platform you're in is based off of the logo in the corner. It's either going to say USC or it's going to say Viterbi. you're going to use your single sign-on to get into either platform. They are run by 2 different offices, but you use your same username and your student profile stays the same. So whether you're in Gateway or Connect SC, your profile stays the same. Things that you will see will be a little bit different, because in Gateway, that will be all the Viterbi specific things. And in Connect SC, those are going to be all the USC things that you can participate in. The good news is that there is a toggle button in there. So if you're in one platform, you can just hit the button and jump to the other platform. But the Career Center will also offer a lot of the same things that Viterbi Career Connections offers. They're just more generalists. So if you just have a general question, you want to drop into their drop-in hours or schedule an appointment with their career advisors, totally fine. Participate in their events. I would encourage you to do so. Use all the resources that are available at your fingertips. But the cool thing is you can use both, and I would encourage that, definitely. So before we wrap today's session, I just wanted you to know, who is it that's part of Viterbi Career Connections that you might be working with. You might be like, oh, Caitlin, your picture looks different. Yeah, I have pink hair now. I don't use that as my headshot, but that's me when I look a little bit more professional. And then you'll also recognize Maggie in here, but we have 3 other advisors that can't wait to meet you and work with you and help you out on your career journey. So these are the full-time staff that you can expect to interact with. We do also hire a number of student interns to help with advising and with activities on campus. I believe that we have positions available now for student workers. So if you're interested in having an on-campus job, make sure you look that up. But other than that, that kind of wraps up the presentation portion of the event tonight. But I want to encourage you to stay connected with us. You can go to our website, you can email us. We have a pretty robust Instagram. We're also on Facebook and Twitter. And when in doubt, you can always just give us a call. And when we are back on campus, we're in Ronald Tudor Hall, not to be confused with Ronald Tudor Campus Center. So RTH 218. And so with that, I thank you all for attending today's session. I hope this was helpful to you, that you have a better idea of some expectations when it comes to recruiting season, and how that's going to work. Again, I'd like to emphasize, we can't predict the future of what's going to happen, but we can, kind of let you know what's been going on. So if you have any questions, I'll invite you to use the Q&A box, and Maggie can help facilitate some of those questions in there. So go ahead and drop your questions in the Q&A.
And if people are coming up with questions or they're typing questions right now, we did have 3 questions that came in throughout the presentation. I believe everyone can see the responses, but I wanted to make sure that if someone already asked a question that you might have as well. We did get those 3. So until we get a question, I'm happy to just say what they were. Someone wanted to know about the response rate of the NACE first destination survey. So I did put that information in there. Someone asked about allowing students to take time off or take a lowered course load to do an internship. And I answered that question and provided a resource to a page to learn more. And then another student asked about the prospects for international students as it relates to, COVID-19 and the pandemic, and what that looks like moving forward. So, we kind of answered that in the presentation, but, we know the pandemic did affect recruiting in the 2020-2021 recruiting year, but we're definitely seeing a shift now as we get in-person events starting, hybrid recruiting happening now instead of all virtual, and vaccinations being, so widespread. We are seeing kind of the recruiting coming back around at this time, but what it looks like specifically for international students, it depends on the situation and the student in particular, but that's why our office exists. We're here to support you and work with you and give you a great, strategy and support and resources to set you up for success as an international candidate looking for internships or jobs. So those were the 3 questions we had. Does anyone else have any other questions? You can type them in the Q&A section.
Well, it doesn't look like we have any other questions. So I guess if no one has any questions, or maybe you're just a little bit shy to ask on this platform, as you think of stuff, I'll invite you to email us at vcareers@usc.edu. We're happy to provide some additional information, clarify any of your questions. But thank you so much for participating in today's session. And we hope to see you in the fall. Congratulations again on your admittance. We're really excited to welcome you to campus, and fight on.
We have one question.
Oh,
I'll read it for you, Caitlin. For
Sure.
grad students, how are the prospects for summer internships? As in, what percentage of students secure an internship?
Ooh, that's a really great question. So in a typical summer, our graduate students that get internships are in the hundreds. So we can have anywhere from about 650 to about 900 students get summer internships. Last summer, when people were really kind of confused about, is this internship happening? Are we closing our facility? Are we moving to remote? A lot of employers were kind of trying to figure out what they were doing with their interns. But that being said, we still had over 600 students that had internships secured and moved forward. There were a handful of internships that did get rescinded just because of facilities closing, if it needed to be, something in person. But for the most part, a lot of our employers were able to transition the internships to virtual. And so I would anticipate, now that we've gone through, over a whole year at this point, I would expect those numbers to get back more into the normal range of, 800 students or so getting summer internships. And that's just our graduate students. That doesn't include our undergrads. Another important thing to note too is that our domestic student population does not have to report if they have a summer internship to our office. If you're an international student and you require CPT, your application will go through our office, so we know that number. But I would expect that the actual number of students in Viterbi that get internships is going to be more than what we know of, just because domestic students don't have to report. So percentage wise, I would say at least a quarter of the students that are enrolled at the time have a summer internship. Some of the students may be graduating and not looking for a summer internship. Some of the domestic students, again, they don't have to report to us, so we don't know that number. But I would say a good number.
And I want to add as well, from an industry perspective, that we're seeing a really big shift in how people are looking for candidates as far as remote opportunities. So the pandemic did force everyone to be remote, but it also opened up, a new way of thinking, and companies are looking at offering maybe more remote positions. So that also opens up more opportunities. Say a company previously was only on the East Coast and they'd only do in-person, and they wouldn't even look on the West Coast, for example. Now, if they have a remote position, they're now going to look on the West Coast, because it doesn't matter where the person is located necessarily. So I definitely think that the internship possibilities are very promising for you if you do take the necessary steps and put in the work and the effort that it takes, to set yourself up for success to find it. We have 2 more. So Kevin wanted to know, in regards to international students and minimum credit requirements, do international students have to be enrolled in at least 6 credits during an internship?
Okay, so for international students, your rules are a little bit different for credits and internships. So here's kind of the simple answer, but it will really depend on your individual circumstance. So for international students, you do have to be enrolled into regular academic semesters as a full-time student. So that would be, fall and spring, enrolled full-time at 6 units. Then you'd be eligible for CPT in the summer. So you could do a full-time 40 hours a week internship in the summer. But let's just say your employer loves you and they want to invite you back for another internship during the academic semester, or they want to continue you on. Then you still have to be enrolled in 6 units. And then you would do a part-time internship during, we'll just call it the next fall. But that being said, if you are in your last semester and you only have, let's just say you only have 1 course left to take, and you get an internship, you could do something called reduced course load that you'll work with your advisor on. And then you can take a full-time internship with less than 6 units. And that's only in your last semester at USC. So I'm going to say for the most part, you can work full-time in the summer, 40 hours, but during the academic semester, it is going to be the 6 units and then a part-time internship. But again, it will depend on your unique circumstances. How many units have you taken? Where are you at in your graduation requirements? We are not academic advisors, so I always say check in with your academic advisor as you're navigating that process.
And I had another question come in about what 1 credit course to take in order to participate in a summer internship. I also added the link to the CPT page for graduate students in the chat because there is a lot of case by case and weird specific, requirements for different things. So that page is going to be really useful to answer any questions around CPT.
Yes, that page will have all of the information. So depending on your major, you will take a different course. And then it will also depend on what's your major and is this your first internship or your second internship. So definitely refer to the Viterbi grad CPT page, or you can always go to ois.usc.edu. And that's our international student office. So either the Viterbi grad or OIS is probably going to be the best place for you to get that information regarding what specific course to take.
I just put it in the chat.
Okay, thanks, Maggie.
And the next question we have is, so what resources are there for a student coming in directly from their undergrad to the graduate program?
So all the resources are available to everybody. I think some of the challenge that students face when they're going directly from undergrad to grad is, oh, I don't have that work experience. And I think that's totally fine because there are other ways to get experience than just, work experience. So I would encourage you, if you are trying to figure out what the game plan is, first go to our toolkit because there is a career plan for you. And it's really the step-by-step guide of here's what you need to do your first year, and here's what you need to do your second year in order to really set yourself up for success. And it has nothing to do with if you took a gap year or maybe had several years of work experience between undergraduate and grad. Start with a career plan. And if you still have questions, I would encourage you to schedule an advising appointment with a career advisor on Viterbi Career Gateway.
And I put the career plan, I answered the question by putting the career plan in there.
Perfect.
So check it out, but it's also in the toolkit, which I also linked earlier. So you can just navigate to it that way. The next question is, what things over the summer should we be doing to best prepare ourselves for internship recruiting?
Ooh, that's a great question. And I would encourage everybody that's still on to start preparing now before classes start. Um, a few things I would probably have you do, and then Maggie, please feel free to add on some additional things. Start working on your resume now. Um, Go and take a look at sample resumes, but don't copy and paste. You want to make sure that your resume is unique to you and not a cookie cutter of somebody else's. The idea is to stand out in a positive way, not blend into everybody else. So start putting together your resume. It should be one page. And so that means cutting out all the extra stuff that maybe is not as applicable to the position that you're applying for. So work on that now. Start looking up positions that sound interesting to you. Take a look at the job descriptions of full-time jobs. What requirements do the full-time jobs have, and what are you missing right now that you can start planning on working on throughout your time here at USC? So this is kind of, you're going to play the long game. If you're not particularly strong in one area, make sure that you are doing the things throughout the next 2 years that will set you up for success. So you can say in a future application, yes, I have this skill already. But it's also important to look at internship job descriptions too, in making sure that you understand the idea of tailoring your resume for a particular position and not just having the same resume that you apply for every job with. Again, I'm going to send you back to the toolkit for more information on how to build your resume and tailoring your resume and that sort of thing. So taking a look at job descriptions, I think if there's a particular area that you don't feel as strong in, but it keeps showing up over and over again in the job descriptions, start working on a personal project that helps you build that skill set a little bit more. One thing that's important to note is that you can include personal projects on your resume. They don't have to be paid experiences. They don't have to be class projects. They could just be, a passion project of yours that you took the initiative to do on your own. So a little bit of self-learning, but that can go on your resume as well. Start looking at the employers that you might be interested in working for. I know that there's a lot of big name companies out there that maybe you already have in mind, this is where I want to work. I think it's a good idea to start doing research on that organization now, so that when they show up at the career fair or they do a Trojan Talk, or maybe they're doing their own virtual fair or just happen to have a job opening posted on their website, you're going to be able to target your materials a little bit better, and kind of understand a little bit more about what they're looking for. Maggie, do you have anything else that you would add to that?
I would say also similar to like starting to look at, opportunities and figuring out what you may be interested in, also starting to get a little more involved. So using LinkedIn, Viterbi link, student organizations now, and figuring out kind of what you may be interested in pursuing, and using informational interviews, which is just setting up a phone call or a Zoom call with someone to talk to them more about what their job is like, can be dual purpose. It can help you in your research on what you might really want to do, but it also helps you start to build that professional network of people who know who you are and what you're interested in, that could, potentially down the line help you get connected with more opportunities. So I just put that also, I answered the question with that stuff and I linked it so you can check it out.
Awesome. Those were some really great questions. I'm glad we didn't end the meeting before you guys had a chance to ask.
Yeah, sorry if there's some typos. I was writing really quickly while Caitlin was talking. Any other questions?
All right, maybe this is really the end. All right, well, it looks like the majority of you hung in there until right now. So we appreciate you sticking around for some of the Q&A that happened. But if we don't have anything else, Well, hopefully we answered all of your questions, or your burning questions at least, and you have our contact information if other things pop
Yeah.
up. Well, all right then. Well, let's go ahead and wrap today's session. We appreciate you hanging on and participating. We're again looking forward to seeing you in the fall semester. And until then, start working on your application materials, your resumes and your cover letters, doing your research and getting some really good virtual networking in.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for logging in. Thanks for all the great questions.